Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. There are some big shakeups going on in Asia right now. We can look at the very, very strong relations that are currently developing and flourishing between Russia and the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, as well as the recent elections in South Korea, which I think shocked many in Washington, D.C. and in the West who obviously have celebrated a long-standing, relations and security ties with South Korea. Things are beginning to change, and Donald Trump's tariff war, I don't think, is helping the situation. Okay, so joining me today to discuss all of this and more is someone who has probably the most expert opinions that I could think about on these matters because, you'll hear his bio right now. Professor Georgy Toloraya is a seasoned Russian diplomat with years of experience serving two postings in North Korea. He was the deputy chief of the Russian embassy in South Korea and the deputy director of the Russian Foreign Ministry for the Korean Peninsula. Today, he serves as the executive director of the Russian National Committee on BRICS Research, director of Center for Russian Strategy in Asia, and professor at the Institute of Economics of the Russian Academy of Sciences. So, Professor, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
My pleasure joining you. I'm fine, thank you. Nice to be here.
Very good. Very good. I want to start off by just getting your general reactions to these elections in South Korea. We saw the victory of President Lee Jae-myung. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. President Lee was an underdog. I don't think many in the West thought that he would come out of this victorious. What were your thoughts on this, and what do you think the implications will be for the region moving forward?
Well, it was clear for me, and I stated that publicly immediately after the attempt of the coup by the former conservative president Yoon Suk-yeol, that there will be change in government. Because that was not just Yoon Suk-yeol personal wrongdoing. I would say that's a crisis of the conservative ideology and their approach both to internal and external policies. So it was quite predictable, at least for me, that the Democrats will win the next election. And so it took half a year for the country to put itself together, but finally we have the predictable results of Lee Jae-myung, the Democrat, winning the presidential election, and he enjoys the support of the most of the people, even in those regions where traditionally they vote for conservatives. They voted for him in some places, although, of course, the country remains divided. About, I think, a third of the electorate is still diehard conservatives, who now trying to say that maybe the elections was a fraud, that Chinese agents have somehow distorted the results. But I think that this talk will die out soon. So we have the mandate of the people to the Democrats, to Lee Jae-myung, and I hope he will use this mandate to the full extent to reform both the internal policies and to normalize the external policies. Especially speaking about Russia, I hope that there will be room for improving the relations between Russia and South Korea, which are now at very low level.
You know, a lot of people online I've seen mentioned these allegations, rumors, conspiracy theories of Chinese influence and whatnot. And they describe President Lee as some radical leftist. If you could maybe enlighten us as to what is the ideological vision of someone like President Lee. We're not about to get some South Korean Juche Marxism, I don't think, but hopefully some relieving of tensions between external former enemies, as you put it.
President Lee has a real extraordinary biography, literally from rags to riches. He came from a very poor family. He couldn't even finish the elementary school, and he had to work to earn his living. So obviously he was very left-minded in his youth, and he has some credentials for supporting the workers' movement, for sharing the leftist ideas. But there was a strong evolution. And now I would say that now he is a sort of a centrist, or I would rather say a pragmatic. He has very pragmatic ideology, and he accommodated some of the ideals and some of the values which were traditionally considered to be conservative. So he cannot can be called leftist, let alone he cannot be called pro-Chinese or pro-North Korean, of course. And he is, of course, will carry on the ideas which are the basis for the Democratic Party for improving the life of the population, for improving the economic and social atmosphere in the country, which is I would say, not very positive these days. But at the same time, he won't challenge the big business. He won't challenge the liberal economy, and he won't, of course, challenge the U.S.-Korea alliance. Rather, I would expect the American side might challenge it, but not South Korean side.
We've seen in the few days since he's been in power that he has stopped some of these psychological warfare tactics that have long been employed by South Korea, like blaring K-pop across the border into the DPRK. He has vowed closer economic and possibly even security ties with China. How do you think the U.S. is going to respond to that if they move forward?
Well, first of all, let me explain a little bit about the situation in Korean Peninsula, because traditionally the chief challenge for South Korean government was its relation with North Korea. But somehow in this presidential campaign, North Korea was really not in the very first lines of the discussion. Because the situation have actually changed. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, early last year declared that he is no longer sees the two countries as part of one country. That he is not going to pursue unification with South Korea. He said that we are two different countries, we are two different nations, we are enemy countries right now, but we are different. So there's no more talk about unification, and unification means one country, in fact, invading the other. There's no other way when they have been hostile for almost 80 years. So there's very little chance for North Korea now to be suspected of aggression towards the South, and the electorate feels it. Although the conservatives and Yoon Suk-yeol have said that there is lots of danger in the nuclear program and that North Korea is a threat, in fact, the South Korean populations see that their greatest danger doesn't come from North Korea. So this is one of the challenges that Lee Jae-myung during his president term will have to address, because still we have in the South Korean Republic of Korea constitution the notion that the territory of Republic of Korea is the whole of Korean Peninsula, and that obliges the government to swallow, to occupy North Korea, or to unify in any other way. So this is a obvious contradiction, and this is something that have to be solved. But North Korea has become not the first danger and not the first threat for the government. And that brings to the issue the question of the alliance with US. The original mission of the alliance with the US was defending against North Korean threat, which was quite tangible in the 1960s and even 1970s. But since the situation have changed, what would be the mission of the alliance? US government, the Trump government, is discussing now some issues which gives suspicion to South Koreans that the real mission of the alliance is to contain China, to be a sort of a advanced post for confronting China. And this is a big issue for South Korea. How U.S. will act in case of some conflict on Korean Peninsula? Will it interfere, or will it stay a step aside? And how the relation with China is to be built. Therefore, there have to be discussions between South Korea and U.S. What are the modalities of the alliance now? Apart from that, the issue of tariffs, the issue of economic cooperation is also very acute. And there is some progress in the negotiation, but still there's many issues to be solved between U.S. and South Korea in economic terms. There's a lot of job to be done for the South Korean government and the American counterparts as well.
So you think it would be completely out of the question then for something like South Korea to have interest or express interest in joining BRICS?
BRICS is an organization. Rather, it's not an organization. This is an alliance or union which has some principles which have to be respected, and one of them is sovereignty, and of course. The country which has such a close alliance with U.S. and has U.S. Troops on its territory cannot be considered neutral or fully sharing the purposes of BRICS. I would suggest that South Korea may try to get in touch on some issues of branch-to-branch cooperation with BRICS countries. But so far, I don't see it as a full member and even not as a partner.
North Korea has expressed interest in building these ties with BRICS nations, and I think even publicly they've expressed interest in joining BRICS, even though there's been no formal application process that I know of that's been started yet. Why do you think that is? Is North Korea just too extreme to bring into the fold?
Well, North Korea is not very eager to be a part of international organizations, historically so. They've never been a full member of for example, of Comecon, which was an economic grouping of the socialist countries. It wasn't the member of the Warsaw Pact or other communist countries, organizations. So it's a little bit standing at their own, not joining any alliances or organizations. So their interest to BRICS is, of course, very positive because it brings the country to the open. And there were some contacts, for example, for women's organization where the foreign minister took part. But there's no talk about North Korea or DPRK participating in BRICS in full. Some kind of exchanges, some kind of cooperation may take place, but BRICS, in fact, has a long line of aspirant nations who would like to be partners or to join BRICS. There are about 30 of them. And there's no intention on the BRICS part to broaden its ranks anytime soon. So this is a very long-term prospect, I would say, and it's just useless to discuss it right now, speaking about North Korea.
Do you think, though, that the recent, it was very big news, the recent, efforts by North Korea to send their troops to Russia to participate in the special military operation, and as we know, they weren't just on the back lines. Some of them were even doing stormtrooping operations. Do you think that is a signifier of maybe some form of willingness to open up and branch out, or do you think this is kind of a one-off example where North Korea saw an opportunity to aid in the fight against imperialism with Russia?
I think it's more related to its relation with Russia, a bilateral relation. The show of unity on the ideological basis, fight against imperialism, or what we in Russia call unipolar world, and North Koreans see that as a fight against the West. And also, it's based on the personal Kim Jong-un to Vladimir Putin relations. This was the demonstration of the solidarity with the cause of Russia to oppose the West, to fight the West. That's why they sent the troops. Of course, we can say that pragmatically speaking, the troops need some combat experience. But that was secondary. The motive was to help the friends in need.
I see. It makes sense. Another question I have about the recent Trump tariffs, I mentioned that at the start, is we saw China, Japan, and South Korea come together in some way and state that they were thinking about a joint response to these tariffs, and that they were even discussing free trade agreements within the region. What do you think these tariffs and the Trump foreign policy vision is going to mean for Asia, the Asia Pacific? Do you think it's kind of unifying them, people and countries that were up until recently nothing but either hostile or enemies, or didn't really have any cooperation whatsoever?
Well, the situation is so turbulent and I would say liquid that you cannot make any predictions. And as to tariffs and the trade negotiations with U.S., it looks like everybody's doing it by itself. Now we have some news about China-U.S. Trade dealings, and we also have the cooperation, the talks ongoing between South Korea and U.S. So tactically, these three countries, as well as other countries, may demonstrate their unity, the potential of their joining their forces in addressing these challenges. But at the same time, speaking in practically, you cannot really expect them to act together or to form some kind of a trade bloc. But at the same time, of course, it's true that the Trump's policies, they force all other countries to find some new ways of doing business, of setting some new rules, of avoiding, for example, dollars for their settling their accounts, and to find new ways in the absence of the regulation by the WTO. They have to find their own ways to address the burning issues.
One of the big foreign policy, I guess, themes of the Trump administration, maybe it's on the back burner right now, but moving forward, I think, will be confronting China. You hear in the DoD, a lot of people have been talking about that for a number of years. War with China by 2027 is often talked about. If something like that is pursued aggressively, war with China over, say, Taiwan, do you think it will cause the further unifying of all these nations in Asia to come together and unite around one common goal and a strategic interest? Or do you think there will be further division amongst historic allies of the United States if this were to manifest?
Well, despite the ongoing increasing cooperation in the trilateral format, I mean, Japan, Korea, USA, I think that kind of event could be a real rule breaker and game changer. Because unlike Japan, who will probably join U.S. in opposing China in case of an emergency, I don't think that South Korea will be that eager to get into this fight. Of course, they have some alliance obligations, so they'll provide some kind of logistical support. But they would try to distance themselves as far as possible from this hypothetical conflict. And this could also, of course, change the whole geopolitics of the not only of East Asia but the whole globe.
Yes. Yeah. One of the big things that we saw in Trump's first term that I think surprised a lot of people was his visit to North Korea, literally crossing the borderline, and his efforts, although not so fruitful, to broker new relations with Kim Jong-un and the DPRK. Do you think in this term, given the recent events, the new election in South Korea, Kim Jong-un's new attitude towards two distinct countries in the Korean Peninsula, do you think that we might see new efforts by President Trump to try and foster relations with Korea?
We already are seeing the efforts by President Trump. He mentioned several times that he wishes some contact or resumption of dialogue with Kim Jong-un. And there were attempts by the U.S. officials and other U.S., I would say, agents for contacts. But so far, they were not successful. Why? Because the situation has radically changed. First, Kim Jong-un was really deeply offended by the outcome of the Hanoi meeting and subsequent meetings with Trump, because he felt that he was sort of cheated. And he, in fact, lost his face in the opinion of his subordinates. He was very much disappointed in Trump and diplomacy as a whole. So you need really to do something special to win back his trust. I'm not sure how Donald Trump is prepared to do, how far he can go. Second, then the situation was quite different because North Korea was in a difficult position. It was heavily sanctioned. They saw an opening by improving the relation with the U.S. and South Korea at the same time that could lead to breakthrough. Now they feel that they don't need it. They learned to live with the sanctions, so sanction relief is no longer that urgent for them. That might be a good thing, but not something that they cannot live without. They have the established nuclear weapons potential. We may not recognize it, and we won't recognize it, of course, because they're not members of NPT. But anyway, it's there. And so they feel that their nuclear deterrent is quite powerful to deter any kind of aggression or any kind of unwelcome scenario. And they have a powerful ally, Russia, which undertaken the obligations to defend North Korea in case of an emergency. So economically speaking, they're much better off than they were at the time because of they used to live with the sanctions, and they're getting some benefits from cooperation both with Russia and China. So they don't feel the need for any kind of large-scale economic assistance or even opening. So there's very little that U.S. can offer to North Korea. And North Koreans don't feel any need for any concessions to get this possible assistance or recognition or whatever. They're not prepared to talk about denuclearization, which was the pinpoint of the previous negotiations. So in case of a contact with Donald Trump, what they're going to talk about? U.S. should, in fact, unilaterally declare that we recognize this country. We have abandoned our goal of changing the regime and unifying the country under the South Korean cap. So that means that U.S., not just the administration, but the whole of the establishment should completely change the paradigm of relations with North Korea. And I'm not sure that U.S. is ready for this. And even Donald Trump cannot overcome his public opinion, his Congress. So I see very little reason for Kim Jong-un to react to these advances by Trump that I want to meet you. What we're going to talk about. And we can see by recent publications when North Korea was not included into the list of countries, the citizens of which cannot enter US. That was interpreted by some commentators that this is sort of a signal to North Koreans. And North Koreans, they published an article saying, we don't need this kind of signals. We're not interested in visiting US. And please don't think that we are looking for any contacts with the US or something. So this is a sort of rebuff to any future US approaches when they happen. So I'm not very optimistic about direct US DPRK contacts, even when the policy would be set in Washington, which is not the case now.
What do you think has been the primary driving factor behind the DPRK's economic success that now a lot of people are witnessing as they're allowing tourists to come back into North Korea? I've seen videos, a lot of YouTubers, lots of Russians, obviously. Well, even one of my dual citizen comrades, he's American and Russian. He took the visit with President Putin when they all went over there. And the cities that I've seen look wonderful. The apartments are given to free for the people, as I understand. And they've had great military advancements recently with this new Navy ship, and I guess it's a nuclear capable ship. And you also have their drone manufacturing. What do you think is the primary driving force behind all of this success?
Well, I would say that, of course, DPRK is now much better off than it was before. Than it was, for example, in the 90s when they had famine, then we had starvations. But still, it's a rather poor country and still not evenly developed, both in branch-wise and territorial-wise. Pyongyang is exception. Pyongyang is much more different from the rest of the country than even taking Moscow from the provincial and some remote village areas. Of course, there's been a lot of construction. And construction is something you don't need much technology for. All you need is the production of the building materials, for which North Korea have a good base, and workforce, which is also plentiful. So they've reached quite a high, big scale of construction, especially not only the military and industrial objects, but also housing and medical centers and different social objects. And this is quite visible. But still, the supply of consumer goods and food is limited, and the money of the population, the resources, the financial resources they have is also limited. So they live better than before, but not still far from, for example, from the standard of living of neighboring China or even maybe Vietnam. There is a difference. There is a middle class which appeared and which the foreigners most see and encounter, which looks much better than the rest of the population. But don't forget, this is maybe just 10, not more than 10 or at best 20% of the population. So the country is better because is living better because they work a lot. They're using their resources not only for military purpose, which has already established the military-industrial complex, but for civil construction and civil branches. But still, they have a long way to go.
Well, Professor Tolorai, I think that's a great place to wrap up on. Thank you so much for providing all of that insight. It's not every day you get someone that's an expert in Russia, China's, South Korea, North Korea, all these countries. So I found the conversation extremely insightful. And is there anywhere you'd like to shout out where if you want to share your work or anything like that for people to follow you?
I'm publishing some articles and books, which one of which is in print. So you're welcome to Google and look at the materials that are published, which have this information in more detail.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, Happy Russia Day to you, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.